This is the Wheel of Time podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about the Wheel of Time, Episode 7, The Dark Along the Ways.
Which one of us is it?
She doesn't know. And so tomorrow I will take all of you to the Eye, knowing that 3 of you will not return.
How can you be so sure? Like, isn't there a chance that Mat's the dragon? That we survive? That you're wrong?
It's easy to use doubt as a crutch. But doubt is the first step towards surrender to the dark. Look, I didn't choose this path for myself any more than you did, but I will follow it because I must, because I know what is right.
You've made your choice, but we'll make our own. Powerful as you are, I don't think you can drag the 4 of us there against our will.
Running, hiding, won't save you from the weaving of the pattern.
Welcome back, fellow wheelies. Yes, this is the Wheel of Time podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we are talking about Episode 7, The Dark Along the Ways. I am one of your hosts, John.
And I am Chris. I feel like we should be jumping into, like, you know that smoke on the water? Because anytime I heard the title, I was like, Dark on the Ways. Dun, 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 dun. This is a heavy metal kind of episode, especially the opening. Oh my god.
Definitely. And indeed, like the opening, we are a man down. We have left Derek behind us as we've passed through the Waygate. He is safe in the real world where we are caught in a dark and horrifically nightmarish place that is between space and time, so like
basically finishing episode 7, waiting patiently for episode 8.
We're doomed, effectively. But yes, no, Derek cannot be with us for this episode, boo-hoo. But unfortunately, yes, with work, he is unable to give up some of his time this time. But he will be back for the final episode of Wheel of Time, fellow wheelies. Do not worry. But we will get into our spoiler-filled discussion of this episode. Before we do, though, just remember you can head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast, or you can leave a voicemail just by clicking on the tab on the right-hand side of the webpage. You can also send in your feedback to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com for all your thoughts, comments, observations, theories, question marks, you name it, anything to do with our coverage of the Wheel of Time, and we will discuss it in our feedback section after the main part of the podcast.
Yes, but with all that, I have a lot to discuss.
Oh yes.
So let's dive right in with some of those good old episode details. I'm going to take Derek's part here and go, the story is based on a book series by Robert Jordan. The showrunner is none other than Rafe Lee Judkins, but this episode was written by Amanda K. Schumann and Catherine B. McKenna. Amanda K. Schumann was the writer on The Blacklist and Chuck, and has written the Wheel of Time Season 2 opening episode.
Wow. So
we will see more from Amanda. And then Catherine McKenna was a staff writer on the anthology series Dirty John, which some of you may remember was had Eric Bana, Connie Britton, and of course Christian Slater for all you 80s kids, or 90s kids.
Oh yeah, Christian. Gosh.
Yeah.
What a
Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah, what
there
a heartthrob. Loved him.
And then this episode was directed by Ciaran Donnelly. Ciaran's an Irish director known for his work on The Vikings, The Tudors, which, by the by, are both filmed in Ireland.
Certainly are.
And then 3 episodes where I know him from of the superhero show Krypton, which was killed off before its time, unfortunately. But he included in the pilot, and that's how I knew, because it was a big thing. Like, basically, an Irishman was directing this big CW pilot, which it was in the Superman universe, and they were like, it's going to be the next big thing since sliced bread. And it was pretty darn good, but unfortunately, Much like the dinosaurs, it went extinct before its time.
Yeah, it was like the Superman version of Gotham, where it was
exactly.
younger sort of time period on Krypton before, unfortunately, chaos, destruction, and planet explosion brought an end to that entire civilization, with the exception of Superman or Kal-El. So yeah, good stuff.
Much like what happened in Gotham, right? That's what happened in the final series of Gotham. An asteroid blew up the Earth and everything was fine.
And great to see an Irish director getting involved here with Ciaran Donnelly. Yes, love the Vikings, and Tudors care less for. Prefer a bit of, blood, guts, and beer drinking, I think. So yeah, great stuff seeing Ciaran Donnelly coming into the Wheel of Time verse, I guess.
Yes. Hopefully we see more of him in season 2.
Indeed.
But do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis, John?
Sure. Long ago, on a snowy volcanic mountain, a warrior Aiel defends herself against soldiers during the Battle of the Shining Wars, as she attempts to give birth to her child. Killing the soldiers but mortally wounded, an enemy soldier named Tam Al'Thor helps her deliver her newborn son, as she dies from her wounds. In the present, Mat Cauthon is left behind as the group make their way through the ways to Fal Dara, but they are not alone. The ways have been corrupted and darkened by the Darkspawn, who have used the ancient passages as a means of travelling through the world. At a vandalised waygate, the group rest as Loial tries to decipher its directions to their destination, where they are attacked by a Trolloc. But the use of the one power in the ways unleashes the Black Wind, or Machin Shin. As they race to make it to the Fal Dara Waygate, they are enveloped by the Black Wind, which speaks to them about their past, present, and future. They escape the Black Wind after Nynaeve deploys her use of the One Power to hold it back, and they make it to Fal Dara, an ancient fortress that defends the Westlands against the encroachment of the Blight and the forces of the Dark One. But after a drink at the local inn, where Moiraine employs a gifted landlady, a Seer, to read the companions' weave, tensions begin to spill out between Rand, Nynaeve, Egwene and Perrin, after Moiraine tells them she is unclear who among them is the Dragon Reborn, and of the mortal danger they are in if they are not the dragon. As they spend time with their own thoughts in Fal Dara, Nynaeve begins to get to know Lan's past, staying the night with him, while Egwene and Rand make amends after their falling out over Mat and Perrin. The next day, as the companions begin to assemble for their journey through the Blight to the Eye of the World, two of their party are missing, Moiraine and Rand. Earlier, as the others slept, and with the words of the Black Wind echoing in his head, Rand's memories and thoughts coalesce around those of his rescue of his wounded father at the Two Rivers, his escape from the Dark Friend in Breen Spring, and the attack in the Ways. A single thought enters his mind. I am the Dragon Reborn. Dun, dun, dun. If ever there was one that was needed, it was probably for this episode, with what happens at the end, which of course we will get into, but we are leaving it to our spoke number 3 just to keep the old juices flowing and so on. But for sure, yes, Moiraine and Rand off on their own road trip through I really like the depiction of the Blight here. Certainly just the skull being captured in one of the roots and vines that is, looks like it's going to take them forever to get to.
It was that kind of like, they already was like, it's about a day's walk. And I'm like, all right, they were like a 10-minute walk from Fal Dara when they arrived and said that. I was like, oh, they're in for a walk. Like, it's a good 24-hour walk. Like, it's like, yeah, you're going to walk the whole, anyway.
It looks pretty, difficult and grim. Yeah. There was a really good tweet actually before the series started of, one of those kind of Art Deco, travel and holiday posters done in that style of go to Fal Dara. And it was just like the idea of that as your holiday retreat, smelling the stench of the Blight, sort of coming across a Darkspawn or something whilst walking, in the mountains around. But, it was, It was really good fun. It was a nice little kind of take on it. Good art as well.
The oasis of Fal Dara.
Exactly.
But let's get into our overall top spokes for this wheel, for this episode of the Wheel of Time. I think let's kick off at the beginning, because we both were kind of interesting to go, oh my god, we're going into the ways. So spoke number 1, it is the Dark Ways. Like, we see some very interesting, well, we see the depiction of the ways here.
Yeah.
So we get a bit more information that like these were usually traveled over the years. We hear that it has been corrupted, and initially not by what, but we just hear it's been corrupted.
Yeah.
But Trollocs don't travel the ways. That's what we're told. Like, they don't know how to. They don't know how to get through. It's impossible for them. And that's not true. Which is, I was like, you kind of sidestepped that really quickly, but okay, because it was essentially, we're not going to find out till later. But it's interesting, the depiction of how I always had it as this kind of, almost like the Sonic the Hedgehog Green Hills. It was basically just these floating rocks, kind of just, and bridges and connections and floating islands. And what we see here is this visual style is more, it looks like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I love that depiction with the hexagonal rocks and so on. Giant's Causeway immediately sort of slapped me in the face, but really nice, really atmospheric though, even with the dark, with the lightning and some of the wide shots that they did, I think when they hit camp. And you've just got the firelights of that encampment. But like, as you say, Chris, you hear Loial talking of what the ways used to be like, you know, that there were trees and that it was soft and green underfoot. It feels like, you know, that environmental paradise, this one with nature, and very verdant, and safe. Probably light as well, whereas here you see that it is stripped back to its bedrock of the bridges and the passage, the footpaths over this cavernous sort of fall below, and
falling forever.
Exactly. So really, really good, and you see it vandalized with the way guide that's been vandalized, and I mean, of course, as the audience, you're there going, well, I can only really think of a few things that would possibly have done that, but, you know, Trollocs being one of them, or Fades maybe, and we get to hear this, that they have, this is how they've been able to effectively go around this world to get to the two rivers without being noticed, is that they have moved into and corrupted the ways so that the Trollocs and the Darkspawn can move around without being noticed, and at speed. So, like, really nice sort of using this system to hide their sort of search, I guess, for the potential Dragon Reborn. But I really enjoyed this moment in the ways, and certainly with the Trolloc attack and the Black Wind, or the Machin Shin, I thought that was really quite coolly depicted. And
that it was blocked by Nynaeve. Like, that whole scene as like the Black Weave is kind of like insects, but she's holding it up with this almost like sphere of pure just one power. And it's just emanating out. Visually, it just looked stunning. I was trying to take it in as we saw, like, I think I saw more Trollocs running in from the left of the camera.
Okay.
And then you have, like, the Black Wind attacking them because it's drawn by this one power usage. So it's getting heavier and heavier while Moiraine is trying to get them out. And it was just, I was so, for what was quite a short scene, all in all, in that it was about 10 minutes of the whole episode.
Yeah.
It's just it's burned in my brain now as this kind of, I want to see more of them traversing this, because it is this ominous, like, you don't know what's in the background. And we do get a flash of a certain potentially someone.
Well, yes, it from the first episode,
Yes,
of Pad and Fane. Yeah, I as you say, it was so atmospheric what they did here, but it was that, but it was also just some really good conversations as well, and having Pad and Fane, just because actually to begin with I was thinking, oh, maybe that's a fade because it looks like this figure,
yes.
Or you're thinking, is it the Dark One? But you don't see the burning eyes.
No.
So it's really, really nicely done. There were a few things in this whole episode where I thought the camera work was superb. That was one of them, because it's that idea of it's trying to make you squint to see who actually it is. And that's exactly what you're trying to do. And you're not entirely sure, is it a fade? Is it someone else? Is it the Dark One? You just don't quite know until they walk out the other side of the
and
Waygate
even at that,
at Fal Dara.
And even at that, I know who it was, and I still went, no, maybe it's not. You just don't know. And it's only when Perrin, who catches the glimpse, and you catch a glimpse of the side of Pad and Fane's face, that you're like, oh no, it is. They're doing this, and it was so good.
And that's the other shot that I really thought captured what you would do as just in real life.
Yeah.
When was that passing shot where Perrin thinks he sees Pad and Fane, and just the way the camera moved, I thought it was really, really excellent. It really captured exactly how that could happen. I thought it was really well done, but there is this. That visualization was superb, and hats off, I think, to Ciaran Donnelly for capturing that for sure. But some of these conversations as well, like we talked, Mat is left behind here. We were thinking maybe he might get dragged through, or whether, Moiraine would be able to open up the Waygate again. But we do hear that the use of the one power in the ways would invoke this black wind, the Machin Shin. And that it would speak to you. So there is that warning for when they actually use it.
Yeah.
That it effectively turns on the ignition for this black wind, which we could go into all manner of jokes about the innuendo around having black wind, I guess, but we won't do. For the sake of purity and I guess good manners. I just loved with Mat that, you had Rand and Egwene and Nynaeve, having, we will find Mat, and this alternative conversation between Moiraine and Lan at the head of the party saying, well, what if it is him? And Moiraine saying to Lan, I can't let him near the Dark One because I know what he will do. I can't let the Dark One turn to the shadow that is within Mat, because she's seen him with the darkness that he picked up at Shudder Lagoth. And it was just these alternate little conversations, and then the cheeky little sides when they come to this this way guide that is vandalized, and Loial says, well, you'll need to give me some patience whilst I figure out and decipher it with all the vandalism on it. And you just get a real nice sly comment from Rand, basically kind of saying, he's asking for patience, we're all gonna die kind of thing. And I just thought there was some really nice stuff in here, as well as the epicness of the ways, the attack by the Trolloc. Again, another little bit of sleight of hand with the camera showing the use by Egwene of her weave and the one power, which we will come to in our third spoke, as well as the shock and awe that is Nynaeve's use of the weave. Effectively, Nynaeve is a bazooka in her use of the power. You can tell the festering anger or frustration or whatever it is under her that just sends out shockwaves, of the power in this case, a protective ball to prevent the black wind from swirling and enveloping them. But similarly with the death of Lan, it's like this emotional release of the weave, and it's really, really cool. And that it's all just so different. So yeah, this was, I'm really pleased to have, traveled through the ways here, in this episode.
I'm the exact same. My only bit was, I'm very interested to see what they do with Mat. Knowing that where we are going in the next episode, I do not think he'll be back. It may be a brief stint.
Yeah.
In a brief short check-in. But this is a departure from the books.
Yeah.
And the kind of storyline any kind of book readers will know. So I'm very interested to see. I was hoping we'd get a small bit interspersed, but it seems that they'll focus on this core group now, and then maybe a short 5 minutes or 2 minutes in the next.
Yeah.
Especially because Moiraine, knowing that potentially, just in case, he may be the Dragon Reborn, again, before the end of this episode, we know it differently, but he may, so she sets the red Ajay.
Yeah, ominously, she basically asks for a message to go to Tar Valon in order to get the red Ajay to track down, Mat Cauthon. So, yeah, that's pretty ominous given, what we know of the red Ajay and Liandrin as well.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That was really, really interesting. So I think the other thing with the black wind as well, I really liked how what it whispered to Nynaeve as well, you can't protect them all, effectively sort of prompts it into protecting them from that same thing that's just whispered into her ears. We also hear Egwene being called an imposter. There was Moiraine saying, "You will murder these children," which is another big theme that runs through the rest of this episode. You will murder these children and then claim it as heroic. Perrin, effectively, you wanted your wife to die because you loved another. Rand's in this moment is effectively, you love Egwene more than she loves you. It's all these fears, frustrations, things that will eat away at you that is being spoken by the wind to these people. And I suppose moving to our second spoke, which is Fal Dara do or Fal Dara don't, it's as we arrive there through the Fal Dara Waygate, the first thing Moiraine says is put all of that talk out of your mind.
Yeah.
Forget about what the Black Wind has spoken. And of course,
that does not happen because that's like, those doubts and fears you've had, and that's just literally have been whispered in your ear. Don't forget about it. Don't forget about it. It's fine. And you're like,
Exactly. And because of the tensions that arise here in Fal Dara, as they understand effectively the mortal danger that they're being put in here, and how they kind of turn on one another, as well. They all split up, and suddenly everyone is left with their own thoughts. And of course, like that is playing out in a sense, certainly with Rand, as to what the Black Wind has said to them. And you see it with Moiraine as well, because this is about trying to find, before the moment she has to take all of them to the Eye of the World, where if one of the four is the dragon, only one will return, three of them will die for sure. Get from her description, she's trying to protect them.
Yep.
And she can't, because the Seer here cannot identify the dragon amongst the four remaining out of the five. So this whole idea, that she will be a murderer, it is playing through this episode with Moiraine as well. So even the mighty Aes Sedai is troubled by what the Black Wind has spoken. I thought that was a really nice mechanism through this.
Yeah, 100%. But let's speak about Min. So we're introduced to Min now. Her name's not fully given yet, but it is the character of Min.
That's the Seer, yeah.
The Seer, the woman in the pub.
Yeah, the landlady, I guess. Yeah.
We basically hear that the visions that she sees. So she sees Rand with the child, whatever that means. We see Perrin with his golden eyes.
Yeah.
And then we don't see who she refers to, but she sees the flame, a white flame, for one character, and a golden ring for another.
Yeah, or ring of gold, she says.
A ring of gold.
Because I was wondering, is that an actual ring, such as the ones that the Aes Sedai were?
Yes.
Or is it kind of more the idea of a halo ring around
Could
them
be.
of some description? Because, you don't know. So what I've guessed is that the white flame is Nynaeve. And that's more just to the whiteness of how she uses the weave, I guess. And that the ring of gold is Egwene. And I think because she more so wants to be an Aes Sedai, certainly compared to Nynaeve, who's still having serious trust issues here with the Aes Sedai as well. So, this was lovely. I really liked this. And you get the sense that the power of Min and Seers really is frightening to people in terms of this idea that they can sense the weave around people and they glimpse that pattern and what the future brings. And that, she's basically being kept hidden by by Moiraine, more to the point. But if she was found out, she would be in quite a lot of trouble. But she says, while she can't see who actually of the four there in the pub is the Dragon Reborn, she does say that they're all linked together, that there are the lights and the sparks that are trying to fight the darkness, and that the patterns that she's seeing is very clear, which seems to imply more certainty from what she says to Moiraine. And of course, Moiraine asks her, what does she see? And we get that, that relationship between her and the Amyrlin Seed will literally be her downfall. There is a risk. She's playing a game of risk, with this relationship with the Amyrlin Seat. So yeah, I really enjoyed this.
For me, it was great. I'm hoping they explain a bit further on this. Again, we talked about the Tavern Inn, the people who shape the weave around them. And she mentions this briefly in her discussion. She talks about the white dots being drawn to them and then being snuffed out by darkness.
And this is also a little bit of a clue towards this concept of the Tavern.
Yes, exactly.
As well. So this she's kind of implying their Tavern as well through this connection of the weave between them, and that they can influence the weave.
Exactly.
So I thought that was quite nice as well.
I wish there had been a bit more, because you and I got that.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear what Derek, when we talk to him next week about this, what he took from this scene, because, it's interesting. I'm not going to go too much further into the prophecies and what that are said, because I actually know what they are, and I know how they are, and what they mean, and who means what. So I'm not going to spoil it for people, but I just found the choice of how they did this and what they did here was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was really good. And I must say, I loved it. And I love seeing Min, the Seer. And I like how she was brought back in later on, which we'll speak about in Spoke 3.
Yeah.
But it was just really nice. But it also just kind of, it connected back to the ways with what Moiraine had heard from the Black Wind. And then it led to effectively Moiraine really, maybe you could argue coming clean to them, that ultimately the two powers that are going to collide here at the Eye of the World, but with the Dark One and the Dragon and the one power, will crush the other three effectively to dust. Like, if it's not Mat, only one of this four, in fact, only one of all the companions, including Moiraine and Lan, will come out of it unscathed, or at least still alive. And the others will be crushed by the sheer power of forces that is happening in this moment. Which is kind of like, it adds again to the murmurings within this group about the Aes Sedai and whether they're fully trustworthy. But it kind of effectively splits the group here, because you have Egwene, who's almost like an acolyte of that. She's very pro Moiraine, very pro Aes Sedai. You have Nynaeve, total skeptic, distrusts the motives, and really saying, well, you can't force us, you've got to give us a choice. And Moiraine equally says, well, you have till the morning. But I loved her comeback again. I love this kind of sort of real nitpicky, almost passive aggressiveness between Nynaeve and Moiraine, where Moiraine effectively says, you can leave, but running and hiding is not going to save you, because inevitably you're destined to meet the Dark One if you are, or be pursued relentlessly by his Darkspawn so that he can find the Dragon Reborn from your group. So it doesn't matter where you go. And then you have Perrin and Rand in some ways somewhere in between. Rand is, you get it more from the books that, his father Tam warns him about the motives and the sleight of hand that the Aes Sedai play. And you don't really have that to the same level here. But I mean, you get a bit of it in episode 1, but you have them sort of, I think as Rand puts it, he says, they can't lie, but they can mislead. And, Nynaeve makes the point, well, you're only telling us now, but how long have you known this for? That basically we may not come out of this alive. So, and this kind of just heightens some of the tensions within the group. I loved Rand defending Mat against Egwene. I loved how Nynaeve tried to kind of cut down Egwene's sort of go at her by saying, but look at these two in terms of Perrin and Rand fighting over you. And then that realization with Rand and that face off. I mean, wow, Perrin has a deep voice. I don't know whether I would be able to kind of stand up to someone like that. Very intimidating, but I love
almost like a growl.
Yeah, but it was like two bulls. I mean, I was just like, this is really intense. This is kind of, this is flexing the old biceps in front of one another here. No, mine are bigger. But it felt really kind of powerful and adversarial, even though nothing in the end happened. It was really nice. It was a great moment of tension.
Oh, 100%. And it's just the fact that, like, it again just leads to the splintering, I suppose, just emotionally for a few minutes.
Yeah, exactly. But in that moment, because of the anger, whilst they cool down, they're splintered, even within Fal Dara. It's almost a smaller version of the group being split up after Shadar Logoth.
Yeah.
But they're left with their own thoughts in this new city that they've only just arrived in, and that's after the Black Winds speaking thoughts of their own.
And that's it.
And
exactly.
So it builds and it festers, and they're thinking about it. It's Egwene and Rand are suddenly kind of sort of at one another because she is, well, what if it is Mat? And that pushes Rand to saying, but you've never given Mat a chance. He's had a hard life and he's always been generous, but you've never given him a chance. You've kind of looked down at him. And it's kind of like it's like an argument you would have, and it needs you to have a few hours away from one another just to cool down.
Exactly. Exactly.
But in that time, they've all been with their own thoughts, and I thought that was a real nice way. And of course, that is more pertinent for Rand in this episode.
But we do get some additional other bits from everyone else. So before we get to our final spoke, we basically hear essentially Nynaeve goes off with Lan, or she tries to do her stalky.
Yeah.
I mean, which I thought was so cute because he stops and then looks and we don't see, and it's initially waiting and you're like,
yeah.
And then when we see her, we're like, oh, very good. But we do learn more of the background of Lan.
Yeah, I love
which
that.
is important here because I said he's Daishan, leader, the king,
the heir
apparent of this basically empire that is no longer there when the Blight came.
Yeah.
So he is a king with no kingdom. He is a ruler with nothing to rule.
Yeah, a boy with no father, as Nynaeve says.
Exactly,
because he lost his parents and was ushered to safety when the Blight and the Darkspawn came to effectively envelop and destroy their kingdom, their city. I love this with Lan, just that the Daishan. I love seeing that other side of him. He's been this stoic guy, and seeing him with the little girl telling her stories. Again,
of the Trollocs.
Yeah, I know.
Which is great. That's the one thing I love about Fal Dara, which is in everywhere else we hear, like, when you talk about Trollocs and everyone's scared and doesn't believe it, and here they're like, the king of Fal Dara is just like, we've been doing fine, we don't need your help, we're grand.
Exactly.
And then this little girl is like, laughing at when Lan's like, and he had huge tusks, like, rawr, and she's giggling away, and you're like, oh yeah, this is like, they are the last bastion of hope before the Blight. They are used to incursions by Trollocs all the time. So of course a 6-year-old or 7-year-old will go, hey, funny looking Trolloc. Yeah. Tell me more.
Exactly. I love, again, there was another little bit of the background conversation when Nynaeve comes in and Lan and the older guy with the beard are at the door, and he goes to Lan, she's beautiful, and he goes, I haven't noticed. But it's just because she looks spectacular there. I mean, she's mistaken for an Aes Sedai, or Aes Sedai in this moment. So, and you just got this kind of little bit of comments between Lan and the other guy behind her. Again, I thought that was really nice. And hearing about Lan's history. Also, Lan with Moiraine in this episode, because Moiraine says, I like the wisdom. And, you should maybe like go and speak to her. Almost kind of encourages what he does. And whether that is because she knows something as to what may happen that evening, but it felt like, not that they were separating, but there were comments in this episode where it felt like Moiraine was distancing herself from Lan in that moment.
Yeah.
We have Lan speaking with Nyneave, saying to her, she doesn't own me. After they had spent the evening together, that Moiraine doesn't own me in the same way you don't own your 4 friends. And, of course, you have the masking of their bond, at the end. So it was, again, a bit more around this relationship, this bonding between an Aes Sedai and their warder. So again, that was kind of, I really found that interesting.
Yeah, it does make you wonder why Moiraine is doing this. And how their relationship may or may not change and survive after this trip. But I think we've danced around the wheel a bit, as much as possible. Shall we talk about our third spoke, the biggest spoke of all the spokes in the Wheel of Time spokes, the unveiling, of the history of Rand,
the mysterious Rand, the one character that has kind of been in the background. I think up till this point he had knocked down a pretty heavy door, and we did kind of, at the time, I think it was episode 3, A Safe Place, and when we said, oh, was there something to that? But we go back even further in time, and at right up front at the start of the episode, and this whole scene on the slopes of Dragonmount, at what is known as the Aiel War, with the previous dragon, and involving the Aiels from the Westlands, allies to the Dragon Reborn, with soldiers from different kingdoms within the Westlands. And firstly, can I just say, I think this woman is probably the most badass woman I've ever seen. I don't know whether I ever thought I would be on a podcast where I'd be talking about a female warrior who is pregnant and is laboring and is having the contractions, about to give birth, whilst also simultaneously taking down a whole rake of different attackers, and also, sadly, getting a dagger thrust into her side. Like, I was kind of just taken aback by this. I have to say, I was almost speechless. I was just like, this is kind of incredible what's happening. It felt really just tough as nails, quite frankly. And I think that's the only thing I can say to describe it. Her moves were spectacular. I mean, just the fighting was incredible. Even just the idea that the Aiels, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, because every time I say it, I feel like I'm saying ale, like as in the drink, or Aiels or ales, would even allow their women. You think about our society and would say, no, you can't go into war with children, or let alone pregnant, and that kind of thing. And here is this happening. So it was kind of like, I was kind of taken aback by the whole thing. And I kind of just thought it was incredible of this depiction of a very skillful warrior fending off armored soldiers whilst effectively about to give birth. And I was like, I was really sad, actually, that ultimately she died here. And I thought it was a really sort of interesting, unexpected scene, because I knew about this, but didn't know the exact, I don't know whether it is directly from the book, but I knew about what we see later with the final soldier being Tam Al'Thor, Rand's dad, who effectively, it's a great moment where you just see the hilt of the heron blade, and he, helps her, holds her while she gives birth, cuts the umbilical cord, but then she passes away, but he takes the ginger haired boy away to look after. And I love how that is being described whilst Rand is going to Min in the pub again. I just love this whole section. And the other part of this, which I really love, because I said it at the time on episode 1, there was parts that I felt were missing, or they brought them here, and that was the delirious talk from Tam as Rand is trying to get him away from their farmstead back down to the Aemon's field after the attack, and he's delirious with the Trolloc poison, where he's effectively saying, "You're not my son," because this plays such a large part through the first book, where it's playing on Rand's mind. And so the whole quietness of Rand within this series so far, in a sense, it's almost, to me, it makes it suggestive of him being eaten away by these thoughts of what's happening. And I just thought it was really, really cool. I really,
no, 100%. So for me, it's the introduction of the Maidens of the Spear, the Aiel women, the sect of the warrior women, and they're called the Maidens of the Spear. You see them, the way they carry themselves, and they're from the Westlands. The Aiel call it the Threefold Land. It's a desert in the east. It's the Aiel Waste, and we've heard of them when they cover their face. They mean war. You will die. And it's just the introduction to see how they fight.
Yeah. Just,
again, the direction and choice of how they've brought this to life for me is just...
Yeah, it was superb.
It was superb. Yeah. And then you were right, exactly. The parts that were missing from earlier in this episode, or earlier in the season, I should say, putting them here, such an interesting choice. Yeah. Because it really is a way, like, again, we've known a lot about this because we've read the books. So for these new viewers, these new audience, it's all coalescing in one beautiful kind of just overarching, like, everyone's fitting these bits together slowly. And it is this Jenga puzzle until the final brick is removed, and then it all just comes crashing down in realization.
Yeah.
And it helps that then Rand does go see Min again. And we see or hear her description of all this and watch her confirmation going, he is the Dragon Reborn. And upon those words, we see Rand channel. Which for me is just, like we kind of knew when he hit down the door, as you said, like, but in the ways that, because it was so dark, what we saw with Egwene channeling wasn't her channeling, because she went, I didn't even know I was doing it, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It wasn't her.
Yeah.
It was him.
Protecting her.
Protecting her. And what we didn't see was the darkness of his weave. We were only seeing just basically the white. So just...
Exactly. I mean, there's a number of things here. One, it's just the clever use of the camera angle in the waves. So you see the top white part of the weave that is protecting them. And of course, as the audience, you go, it's Egwene, a defensive response, and it all makes sense. And then in this moment where the camera is that bit further back where it shows the full thing, and you see Rand's arm, and you see the white but coupled, sort of interwoven with the dark, like you were saying, and like we saw to another extent with Logain Ablar. The interesting thing I wondered here, it felt like Rand's casting of that weave of the one power, that there was more light in it than darkness compared to Logain's, but that could also just be I guess how it's done in this moment. But the other side of it then is actually, Derek talks sometimes, depending on the show, about the false narrator. And of course, in this instance, actually the false narrator is the camera. of not, and the writing of not showing you that weave, say, at Breen Spring, when you get the sense of something happening around him. It's like there's almost a ripple or a pulse or shockwave in the air, if I remember. But you don't see any of the weave. So it's all, but it just, the camera shifts to a different angle and you see the weave in that moment as he's crashing down that very thick, very large, very heavy, door, that the Lana, the dark friend landlady, has sort of trapped him in. So I kind of like the idea that not only can you get false, or bad narrators that are the characters giving a particular version of events, but I like how, the writing and the direction is also creating that false narrator approach to it and then revealing to it in a really nice way. That's the thing for me. I think it just felt like this was this lovely reveal where they just hadn't shown you too much at at certain times, and now this was the time where they were going to show everything.
It was like with the wind. The wind, we got half of the conversation from the wind saying, so we got the first half at the end when it goes, you are a dragon, you've known all along. The second half, which we saw first, was she'll leave you.
Yes.
She'll always leave you. She won't stay with you. And we thought it was, it's his whole fear is just the Egwene part. And it's like, oh no, his whole fear is he's the Dragon Reborn and she'll leave him because of that. So it's just fantastic.
Yeah. It really was very, very cool. And of course then with the gathering, well, that's the other thing. Given that we are covering Hawkeye at the moment, he certainly was pretty handy with the bow and arrows, here after he was thinking about what he was and so on. So I definitely, he could have auditioned for Hawkeye as well. Could the guy who's playing Rand. But I love then again, you get that the group coming together and the realization that, well, where's Rand? And Lan coming to say Moiraine has gone, and you see them sort of approaching the Blight, having left ahead of them. And again, I guess for Moiraine, it's because she has saved Perrin, Egwene, and Nynaeve from certain death, but also explains why she was distancing herself from Lan earlier in the episode as well.
Yeah, and that's the question we have to ask: Will Perrin, Egwene, Lan, and Nynaeve stay where they are in Fal Dara, or will they journey towards them?
Yeah,
and follow them to the Eye of the World, knowing that they will probably die, knowing that Rand and Moiraine have left for a reason so that no one else will get hurt.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see how it kind of nets out over the next kind of hour. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. To me, I feel like, I don't know, in my mind, I feel that there's still loads to go. And there is a lot to go for that final episode. But I can see that how they can shorten that down. So this will be a pretty epic finale, I'm guessing. And interestingly, with Game of Thrones, there was always this notion that it was the penultimate episode in Game of Thrones, for each season that had the big event. It's not to say that the last one, but it would have the epic battle or the huge reveal or the huge shock moment. And then the final one would kind of would continue that, but it would kind of almost be the fallout from that, and set up for the following season. So this is kind of interesting because I expect it to be pretty, wild for that hour. Given who they're about to meet in the Blight, effectively.
This is why I'm very interested to hear what Derek says next week. I think for a lot of people, the reveal in this episode is massive. For people who have not read the books.
That's true.
For people who are still trying to figure out. Maybe they were spoiled on social media. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they're not aware. But I think the reveal, just the way it was done at the end, makes you go, oh wow. But you're right. We are in for a feast for the eyes and the senses next week.
Well, that's it. And to put it in no doubt, here, Rand, after knocking on Moraine's door, is, I am the dragon.
Yeah.
And Moiraine accepts that. Like, there's a certainty there, that he knows he's the dragon. And that's an interesting reveal as well, it being at Fal Dara, as well, compared to the books, because it's only really in the moment that at the eye of the world does he realize that. So there's a slight shift in where they place that, even here. So it's just nice little tweaks and movements
which
to help
work for the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just, and this is the thing. Again with the Mat piece, I'm like, with this and the changes here with Fal Dara, and just these small tweaks, or sometimes quite large tweaks, just seem to be bringing enough new. They're bringing enough new that I'm like, I'm not just reliving a book on screen.
Yeah, exactly.
It is not a beat for beat. Because I think Rafe Judkins has said this, it wouldn't work beat for beat. Like, you'd need a 20-hour season each season. And a lot of that would be, and they're walking, and they're playing a lute, and they're learning juggling, and they're walking, bit more walking, and like there was the same with Game of Thrones. They were suddenly in and out, snap your fingers, and they're suddenly halfway across the land, or the continent. Yeah. But I think I'm here for where we end up in the next episode. Speaking of, though, let's close out this episode. Do you have any notes for this episode?
Just the only one I have is that Land's bloodline effectively is through the kings of Machin, if I'm pronouncing that right, which is ultimately now consumed by the Blight, and he is the heir to that kingdom, and it's just to put that out there, I guess, just the name of that kingdom that has been consumed by the Blight, and effectively, he is a noble man, and would be king if the Blight hadn't overtaken. And it kind of makes that pairing with Moiraine, because she's been talked about as the noble woman, Moiraine. It feels like that also helps their match, I guess, as Aes Sedai and Warder. But it was just to flag the name of his kingdom, effectively.
Yeah.
Chris, do you have any notes?
No, nothing on this one at all.
Okay, excellent. Well, that means we have spoken.
Hey.
And so, Chris, did you enjoy this episode of The Wheel of Time, episode 7?
100%. Like I've said this before, I'm down for this series in all eventualities and decisions. Just seeing the portrayal of these characters in these events is fantastic. Seeing the new choices they have made is even better for me. It is just being able to fully understand, going, oh wow, okay, so you're doing this. And then just in terms of how they kind of do some of the bits in Fal Dara, and then more just the changes, because it's keeping me on my toes. The big spokes of this Wheel of Time arc, I understand. They're going to get to the same places and do the same things. How they get there is going to be the interesting part for me. The journey, not the destination, as they say. So yes, 100% enjoyed. What about yourself, John? Did you enjoy this episode of The Wheel of Time?
I really did. One of my favourites of the series, or another one, I'd give this 5 reborn dragons out of 5. I just loved it. I loved the opening and the flashback. I loved how that was incorporated into the big reveal of Rand. I loved the thing I was whining about from episode 1, that they didn't have that particular conversation. It came in here and it worked with that flashback. And I mean, we said that they would likely do it, but it just, great timing, great moment, brilliant. I loved our journey through the ways.
Yes.
I loved all the different reveals around the Black Wind and the use of the One Power to protect against, from the Trolloc, with Rand as well. I loved how it all linked in. I loved getting to see Min and see the Seers, in this world, and just how it all kind of came to being in this really, really fantastically depicted fortress city of Fal Dara, this bastion against the Blight, and protecting the gap there, and just them being in this new city away from home with their thoughts after what happened in the ways. I just thought it was really great. And I cannot wait for the next episode, the final episode from this season. So absolutely enjoyed this episode, and great to see Rand coming, being pulled from that background in this way, and it giving meaning to him essentially being in that background for the
duration.
For the duration, as I said, we've seen Perrin with his eyes and his connection with wolves, Egwene's ability, Nynaeve's explosive ability, and it's kind of been Rand where we had him sort of take out a heavy door, effectively that has, well, is it this? And he's had his dreams, he was the first one that we saw with that. They were the two hints but ultimately he was an archer and a farm boy. And here we get to see, he is, as important. I think it's understanding what Min has added to this, through that they are all linked together, when she sees the weave, working and weaving around them, which will be really, really interesting given this idea of the multi-headed dragon as well, that, how this prophecy can be interpreted. So absolutely love this. 5 reborn dragons out of 5 for me. So brilliant stuff. Can't wait for the next episode. Excellent.
Well, all that speaking must have made you thirsty.
Absolutely. In fact, I want to raise a glass to toast the series so far, and I guess it's no surprise, fellow wheelies, that it is time for the Wheel of Time Tavern quiz. Yes, we are, I guess, about to meet our seers, and you will need to know what weave of the quiz is weaving, I guess, to see. But it is episode 7, so it is question 7. And the question is, how many soldiers do we see Rand's mother kill on the side of Dragonmount as she tries to give birth to her son?
One more time for the people in the back row.
I certainly will. How many soldiers do we see Rand's mother kill on the side of Dragonmount as she tries to give birth to her son? Please send in your answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. All the tavern quiz questions will be on tvpodcastindustries.com website, and send them in by the end of 2021 to be in with a chance to win Wheel of Time goodies when we do our wrap-up episode and the draw for the tavern quiz for this series of Wheel of Time. You can send in your answers one at a time or collectively all 8 questions before the end of the year. So yes, get them in. Looking forward to see how the answers stack up for sure, like the bodies on the side of Dragonmount.
Yes, but if you've enjoyed what you've heard, if you've enjoyed this season, why not support us by making sure you jump on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where for a single gold coin, copper coin, you can support us and help us keep the engines on and the hamsters in the wheel running, or in this case, the Maiden of the Spear killing all of those horrible men while she tries to essentially give birth to her beautiful son, the Dragon Reborn. You can help that too by going to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, or help keep our illustrious editor, who needs some coffee, in coffee by heading to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI for a one-off donation.
Yes.
You can also support us by going to each and every podcast catcher and service, liking the episode, sharing the episode, or even leaving a good old review, because sharing the podcast, leaving a review is sharing the love.
Exactly. Any support from our fellow wheelies, from any of our fellow quizzes, and any of our fellows from any of the other podcasts that we do is always very, very much appreciated. And indeed, another part of that support is feedback as well. And we have some email feedback here for episode 6 from Parthenia Locklear. Parthenia says, "Hey there, wheelies. I have not read the books, but from my perspective, these actors are amazing. Leandrin, Kate Fleetwood, she was a very strong character in Hulu's Harlots, and I am enjoying her character here as well. I loved when Moiraine called her out about her having a male friend. Very surprising to see how the Red Aes Sedai have such a hatred of men. I hope they give us more Leandrin. I love how this episode gave us more of Moiraine, showing her to be more human and relatable as opposed to just this powerful stone Aes Sedai. The secret bedroom meeting, that was a pretty cool power to display. I'm guessing they showed us this ability so we weren't so shocked when she opened the doorway to the prison later on. I never expected this love affair with Moiraine and the Amyrlin seat. This whole time I was suspecting that this was going to be Moraine's nemesis. I expected it to be someone that Moiraine grew up with or trained with who harbored some jealousy towards her. I never figured it to be a lover. Nice touch again. I haven't read the book, so this was a pleasant surprise. Unfortunately, the unforbidden love affair is that much harder because they truly have to play their parts for the plan to succeed. I like where this is going. Sophie Okanaido, do I even need to say more? She is amazing. She properly exudes the power of this position, the Amyrlin seat, but also, just like they did with Moiraine, they showed us her softer, more human side as well. The only question I have is, what did Lan mean when he said Moiraine masked their bond? Who did she mask it from, and why? I was happy that all the children are together now with their wisdom. Who better start using some wisdom? I'm glad the reunion wasn't drawn out in the Game of Thrones fashion. With that being said, for all my non-book readers, was anyone shocked when Mat didn't go through the portal? I knew he was going to be the problem child. Did he stay thinking he was protecting them from himself or protecting himself? I'm going with protecting himself. Really enjoying the show. Can't wait to hear your review and reveals, Parthenia. Thank you so much, Parthenia. It's interesting. As well, in episode 7, we do hear Lan talking about Moiraine masking their bond again for different reasons. I guess for episode 6, with her meeting her lover and confidant, she didn't want to implicate him in some ways, or be, a bit of a sort of birdwatcher, I guess, if that's
exactly. They feel there's an element of that kind of explained very quickly, which is warders and Aes Sedai share each other's feelings. So if one is emotionally happy, they will be able to feel that happy on the other. So again, if you are with your lover, your pillow friend, you're going to mask that bond so that your elation and euphoria doesn't spill over to your warder.
Yeah, and I think to your point around Mat, whether he did it to or stayed behind to protect himself or protect them, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I actually think a lot of that plays out here in episode 7 between Egwene and Rand primarily. This idea that they're always thinking that Mat is doing something for himself, and Rand's counterpoint to this is he actually is hugely generous with what little he has, and he's very caring about his 2 younger sisters. And in some ways, I'm kind of with Rand on this, but I feel that he's actually protecting them as much as himself. I think, but it is still a shock that he didn't go through. So it's a shock whether you're a book reader or a non-book reader. I think that
exactly
again,
that was my point.
he's separated, but he is a complicated character, and I guess there's a lot of different views on him. So I think I'm just loving your take on it, Parthenia, as well, because I think we all have this. Sophie Okonedo, fantastic. I loved her as the Amelin Seed, and Leandrin as well. I mean, there are just so many good characters and excellent female characters here, from Leandrin, from the Amelin Seat, from Moiraine, Nynaeve, Egwene. It is just really nice. It's interesting that in this episode with Min, when Rand goes to her and she talks about Dragonmount, and then he says, well, what do you see now? And she says, rainbows, carnivals, and 3 beautiful women, which I thought was a nice little touch, as well. So I think, totally with you here, Parthenia, and real big thanks for your feedback. Please keep it coming on in.
Yes, thank you so much, Parthenia.
Yes, thank you, Parthenia. I've broken out of the ways and come back for the feedback
You have.
section. But I've sent Chris off there while we do the rest of the feedback, John.
Yes, Chris is also lost in the ways at the moment.
Just sent him back there. Yeah.
Yes.
One in, one out, I think, is our plan for the ways. And we also got an email in from Coffee and Vodka who says, greetings, Blight-bound wheelies. The wheel spoke and it was Rand. Now 6 has been rounded down to 2. We'll see how it turns out. I'm here all week. Try the veal. They managed to pass through the mines of Moria with careless whispers replacing the Balrog. But who was that booted fellow seen later? Mat, perhaps? As for the design of the passage, very grim dawn. Lan and Nynaeve sitting in a tree with Moraine's consent. Looks like Jon might get his wish, should she return alive. And Egwene's got her warder on tap, so to speak. Should he do the same? Can a dragon be a warder? An entire episode with everything in it underlined and bold, promising more of the same next week in a show that just gets better and better. 5 difficult births out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka.
Great stuff, Coffee and Vodka. It is being whittled down. I wonder what the remaining 4 will do. Will they race after the 2? I'm hoping so.
I hope so, yeah. Or it's either that or they're just going to stay in Fal Dara and go for a couple of drinks in the bar.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty safe looking place.
Yeah, Moraine's got this, right. We don't have anything to do. I think the booted fellow that was seen later was Padden Fane.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think Mat will be returning. I guess this is something to do with the recast, maybe. But
yeah, have we mentioned that in the podcast that the actor who played Mat is being replaced for the next season? I don't think he's going to be back in the season. I think Chris mentioned that it's very unlikely, given the storyline, that we're going to see the character back in episode 8 of the show. But we know Mat has been recast and is going back in season 2. So,
and in some respects, that's a bit of a shame because he is there in the book, in this kind of whole section at Fal Dara and at the Eye of the World. So, it's certainly not Mat. I think it's Padden Fane.
I think so.
For sure. Yeah. Yes, and I think the wish might be being sort of fulfilled.
Maybe.
First time in ages, for sure. But certainly, yes. Let's hope as well that the dragon can also be a warder. But what type of dragon will he be? And ultimately, what will the Aes Sedai do? So interesting. Or Moiraine. I mean, Moiraine has, on the quiet to the Amyrlin seat and also to Lan, been pretty ruthless about this group as to what may happen. And that there is a larger goal here. So, Rand has also put himself in some significant peril here, by going off with Moiraine. But, nonetheless, it is interesting. Like, he goes to her and it seems pretty determined in doing what they're doing effectively. So, does that change how, he will interact with the Dark One? So, and certainly given the makeup with Egwene, how that will influence maybe how he channels the power. But we certainly did see the old little dark streaks there. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Good to hear your thoughts, and great to hear you're enjoying it as much as we are.
Yes, and I like your racing as well. I think you're getting better at this than I am, to be honest.
Love it. Let's get over to Facebook, facebook.com/groups/TV podcast industries. Some thoughts from the spoiler post over there on Facebook as well. Greg Schwam first up says that the cold open was beautifully shot and what almost seemed like bullet time and was beautifully choreographed. I've noticed that some movies, Jackie Chan for example, although I love them, seem closer to fantasy than reality, but this really seemed more like a dance than a fight.
Yes, it was phenomenal. I loved the whole situation and context of that fight, and the fight itself, as you say, it was just really incredible. Yeah. The Aiels, you don't want to mess with them, to be honest. They are hard as nails.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. And another shout out to Greg for his excellent podcast over on Podcastica covering Wheel of Time with Greg, Ben and Wendy. Go check that out as well. It's really good fun.
Yes, thanks, Greg. Jamie Lawton says, what a great episode. You have a group of adventurers making their way through a cavern system with just the light of their fiery torches. Absolutely beautiful camera work. Then the Keep on the Borderlands, the very first adventure Dungeons and Dragon module I played as it came in the original starter box for Dungeons and Dragons.
Very good.
But the first pre-credit scene of Rand's mother taking out all those soldiers while in the middle of labor was just incredible. One of my favorite episodes. Yeah, absolutely with you there, Jamie. And yeah, that opening was just incredible. I really think so. And the camera work in the caverns, in the ways, was also just really nicely done. Thanks so much, Jamie. Dr. Bob Phillips says, but how does he know? I mean, yes, he's the babe untimely born on the side of Dragon Mountain and raised by his enemy, and as strong as a dozen men and able to channel with no ill effects. And the evil Dark told him, and he's always had the bearing of a prince. But how does he know? Also, excellently rapid birth. Good timing for the death of splenic laceration, and so nice to see the King of Blighty get his kit off and some well-deserved passion. Yeah, absolutely. I really thought Lan's character here just it got room to breathe, rather than being the stoic warder by the side of the stoic Moiraine. We got Moiraine sort of chilling out in the last episode, and here we have Lan chilling out with friends and companions, as well as then with Nynaeve later on. So yeah, really enjoyed that as well. Bob finishes off with, and really, 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 boys, if you're going to train your archers, you need a range more than 10 foot. We did that after the beginner's course. Yes, it does reduce his multiple bullseyes somewhat in terms of the achievement there that he is so close. But
I don't know, if you're going to miss the bullseye a couple of times, move a bit closer and you'll make yourself feel a bit cooler, right?
I guess so, yeah. Like 2 foot.
Exactly. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob.
Deanna Brown Maskell says, I loved this episode. So many juicy tidbits and satisfying encounters. Rand's mother was so impressive, and the story of his birth is epic and fitting for the Dragon Reborn. I love how that story unfolded throughout the episode, tying it all together. There was a lot of deft storytelling here, weaving in so much of the source material. I did wish for more of the ways and still feel Loial is underserved, but recognise there is a lot of story to fit in this show. I just love all these characters so much. Great storytelling and acting. I can almost forgive Bezos his rapacious corporate greed if those ill-gotten gains give us gifts like this.
Thanks, Deanna. I agree. I think Loial seems to just drop off at Fal Dara. We don't know where he is. He's not with the group that is left at Fal Dara after Moiraine and Rand head off to the Blight, but completely with you here. I think the weaving of this story was excellent. I mean, in particular for me, I really liked how the opening on Dragonmount with Rand's mother and the soldiers and the fight came back in with the realization from Rand that he is the dragon.
Yeah.
I felt that tied that really nicely together. Along with, and as I said on the podcast, just that moment of Rand helping his injured father back down to Emmons Fields at the Two Rivers and having the delirious ramblings of Tam about the Rand's own origins and his place in the Al'Thor family, ultimately.
Yeah. And just to address Dr. Bob's question as well, same thing as to how does Rand know? It's kind of this, it's that scene where he's thinking back on all the things he remembers, that conversation with his father, putting all the pieces together and realizes, oh, this must mean I'm the Dragon Reborn. That's kind of what the show's trying to tell you, in those scenes. Excellent stuff. Thanks, Deanna, and thanks to everybody for all of your feedback on these episodes. We've got one more episode to go, which we'll hopefully be recording before the end of the year. Make sure you get your feedback into us on the last episode. And we will then wrap up the season though as well. So if you don't get an opportunity to get it in time for the final episode, you still have an opportunity after we record it to send in your final thoughts.
Yeah, again, a big thank you to everyone who sent in your feedback. Really, really much appreciated. Remember, you can contact us by email, by voicemail, over on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram through the usual social media channels. Just go on over to tvpodcastindustries.com where you can find us. On Twitter, we are at tvpodindustries. Facebook, go to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. As always, fellow wheelies, it is great getting your views, thoughts, theories, observations on this fantastic show. Another fantastic show that we're covering is Marvel's Hawkeye as well. We have just delved into episode 5 of this series as well. So please head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com as well to subscribe to our Marvel's Hawkeye podcast, The Defenders.
So join us next week for the finale of The Wheel of Time, episode 8. The Eye of the World. We'll be back next week with this, as well as the finale for Hawkeye. It is a pleasure being talking to you, wheelies, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Yes, remember there are no beginnings or endings, but this is the end of the podcast. Dare we say it again? We have spoken. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep wheeling. Bye.